Hello, and welcome to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show and owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy. As always, the opinions on this show are not necessarily shared by me. In this case, they may be more so than usual. um, Everyone's got a different healthcare needs and is an individual, and not everything's going to resonate with everyone. And additionally, none of it's meant to be medically diagnostic or prescriptive in any way. An additional disclaimer on this is that this host, which those of you who are watching video can see, is Jeremy, and he has been on the show before. We wear many hats with each other,
We do.
both professionally and friend-wise. And most pertinent to this conversation is that Jeremy is my sensei in the karate classes that I am taking, and he is also a personal trainer and has a history of viewing exercise in different ways. So great to
I
have
probably
you
have
on again.
the least amount of industry accepted medical knowledge of anyone you've had on the show. That would be my guess. So, because the disclaimer I always give people is, I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to anything I say. But so
Yeah. And field experience, you've worked with a lot of people in improving their health, and you have
yeah,
a lot of thoughts on that.
I do. I do. So where do we start? Which of the many
I was
topics are
thinking,
we jumping into?
yeah, so for people who haven't, I will probably mention this in the other episodes, but this will be
Yeah.
one of a few different episodes because we wanted to just have time to really get into some specific topics. I want to talk about movement. And I
Mm.
think in one of our early interviews, you were talking about like just move, like it doesn't have to, the difference in movement and exercise, and then the idea of building health in small spurts of movement. And any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
So for me, movement and exercise are two very different things. And the delineation between the two is sympathetic state versus parasympathetic state. It's rest and digest versus fight or flight. And I think here's the example that I think everyone can wrap their head around. It's walking versus running. You go for a nice leisurely walk on a relatively flat bit of ground, that can be really nice. Maybe the weather's good, it's sunny, you're noticing the trees, and you're just kind of like, oh, that's great. You know, maybe you go for a walk after you eat, right? This is kind of old school prescription. Go for a walk after you eat. It's good for digestion. And we know better now through scientific research that it really is. Versus, I'm going to go to the track and I'm going to run, or I'm going to put on a heavy pack and I'm going to go for a hike, right? The moment your breathing starts to change, it's not movement to me, it's exercise. And both are necessary, but in our culture, in Western culture, we have lumped the two together. We treat walking like running, like weightlifting. And I think that's a major mistake because both provide benefits, but they are not the same benefits, right? I go have a big meal and go for a walk, or go for a run. Tell me which one feels good, right? The two are going to be very different experiences because the body treats them very differently. I don't remember if I shared this on the show when I was on before, but if we go back to 2013, I was on vacation. And where I was, other than I look fondly at this time, has no bearing, but I was on the Galapagos Islands. And at the time, I was a vegetarian. And so being out there on these volcanic islands where almost nothing is grown, and I'm not eating fish, I'm not eating the other meat that was readily available was chicken. I'm not eating any meat, and I lived on pizza and beer for 12 days. Now, I didn't censor myself in how much I ate, and I lost 10 pounds. It was a lot of pizza. It was a good amount of beer. I had a really nice time. But I was averaging walking 10 miles a day. There were plenty of taxis, but if I wanted to check something out, I like walking. My idea of vacation is eating and walking in a different area. So yeah, I'd throw lunch in a pack, and I'd go for a leisurely stroll, and that's what I did for a week and a half. Now, I didn't know I lost weight at the time. But when I got home and I weighed myself, I went, oh, I wonder why. And over the next few years, I ended up with this theory that at a certain amount of movement, the body regulates itself differently. And if you go back in time, if you do the research on and the evolution, right? And when I get into this subject, I have friends who don't believe in evolution. That's fine, but we need to put that aside for right now. But assuming you do believe in evolution, you don't have to go very far back to realize that 10 miles of movement per day was fairly standard. And assuming that you believe in the stimulus that creates evolution, if that stimulus is suddenly gone, something is compromised in the system. So if my body evolved to walk 10 miles a day and I'm suddenly not walking 10 miles a day, what is changing? Right. And anybody who's gone for a good walk knows it feels good, right? It's not quite, it's not the same thing as endorphin release. It's not the same experience as, you have a great workout and you're sweating and you're laying on the ground and you feel accomplished, but it just feels nice. In the same way that sitting in the sun on a warm day, not a hot day, not a cold, just that kind of middle of the road systemic input that our bodies are used to produces.
There's a people have probably heard their 10,000 steps um, statement, which is the sort of the going thing that people shoot for when they're counting steps, which I believe was invented by a Japanese businessman who just had a pedometer that stopped at 10,000. That is entirely arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that the research actually, once people get to 7,500 steps, which seems oddly to me seems
It's
oddly
quite the
specific
round number, isn't it?
and round, yes. But that seems to be about the point that some degree of health benefits seem to be achieved, and past that is diminishing returns or no returns. Similarly, they did whole studies on people who walk to work and
Mm-hmm.
how their health metrics. I can't remember what metrics they were looking at, but the health benefit of walking to work and how far they were from work. And the people
Mm-hmm.
who walked 20 minutes twice a day seemed to be the best, but 30 minutes wasn't that much better.
Right.
So I'm curious of your thought on the idea of doing an intensive vacation where you're clocking well over the
Yeah.
recommended 7,500 and definitely over the 10,000 as well.
It was about
The
20,000,
benefits of
right?
pushing
10
them. Yeah.
miles is roughly 20,000 steps. And if you think about walking at a leisurely pace, 15, 20 minutes, that's a lot of time, right? 20,000 steps, 10 miles, 20-minute miles, right? We're talking about walking, 2.5, 3 hours, 4 hours a day. And you can think of, oh, okay, I'm going to go check out this place. It's an hour walk. I'd walk there and I would walk. And my suspicion is that there are two things going on in those studies, and I don't know the studies, but I also haven't done the research on them because the difference in the way I look at this versus the way science seems to look at this is they remove the sympathetic versus parasympathetic component from it. For me to walk 20,000 steps and me to run 20,000 steps is different. It is a different stimulus on the body. And we know this logically. If I get up and I go for a mile walk versus a mile run, most people out there could walk a mile with relative ease. But if I say go run a mile, right, that starts to get people's reactions. Well, what's different? If we listen to the way most of these studies are conducted, it's the same work. So our calorie expenditure is the same. I'm working harder, but it's for a shorter period of time. So what's the problem? Well, go walk a mile versus run a mile and tell me that those are equivalent. They're not. They're not even close to the same experience. And if that's true, then it means that there is some discrepancy in there that we're not thinking of. Now, I don't pretend to be a scientific researcher and know exactly why these things are different. I simply know that they are. And I know that when we take a look at our movement today, the average person in the West is moving about 4,000 steps per day. which is nothing. It's I remember back to the thing that was going on when none of us were leaving our house, right? I was getting 2,000 steps just being in the house doing normal day-to-day things. So 4,000 is nothing. 4,000 is you get in the car and you walk around work a little bit and then you get back in the car. It's not nearly enough given this evolutionary systemic expectation that the body has.
Yeah, and I also think about the interesting thing about your story about being at the Galapagos Islands, evolution aside from location there.
Right? Like there's some synchronicity there that I think is kind of fun.
But this is vacation. This was relaxed time for you. One of the more stressful times in my life, I was working at a nursing home, and I was walking a good amount a day, and I was walking briskly through the halls. My heart rate was higher than ideal. I was annoyed by toxic workplace environment. I won't
Sure.
extrapolate too much more. But what was interesting is when I left that job, my weight went up because I was walking a lot less. So I was a healthier by a lot of metrics, I was a healthier, happier person leaving the job. But my calorie burn had changed. So I like to, in your case, the walking went hand in hand with relaxation, a lot of good parasympathetic. Maybe you were, and even though you weren't eating like quality food, you were still on vacation. You weren't in stress mode.
Right. And
Whereas for me, yeah, go ahead.
so you're honing in on what I think is the important differentiation. When you talked about these studies of people walking to work, how many people get up and they leave them, and if they're walking to work, they leave themselves tons of extra time and they just stroll to their job and they have very little in that they're carrying and they're not confronted with stressful sights and sounds on the way to work. I don't know very many people who walk to work and they're like, I'm walking to work. What a lovely day. This is so nice. Ah, right? Like no, people pretty much power walk when they're walking to work. That is it's 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 probably closer to running than it is walking.
Walking back from work might be might be better, but
Maybe
I hear your,
better. Yeah.
and I wonder, yeah, I wonder if we were able to tease out the difference between that 7,500
Mm.
as if that the health benefits of that, can you get more health benefits out of light activity, walking, movement, um, if you're less stressed, or does it reach that plateau of there's not of more doesn't necessarily equal much more health? Is that different if you're in a more parasympathetic state? Would be an interesting question to me.
So this is where the only thing I can respond with is anecdote, and it's personal anecdote.
Mhm.
And I've tested this enough times on myself that for me, the tipping point starts to kick in at about 15, 16,000 steps. That when I'm doing that in a where the majority of those steps are in a gentle, relaxed, I'm puttering around the house. I'm working in the yard, but it's a nice day and I'm enjoying it and I'm not lugging heavy things from A to B. There's a different feeling at the end of the day. Now, I am no stranger to physical exercise and really working my body hard, but it's a different feeling. There's something to be said for it. And, we're not going to go into the nitty gritty here, but my digestion is different. My suspicion is at some point, and maybe another topic we get into, though I don't have a lot to say on it because I'm still figuring these things out. I think the way we have come to understand metabolism and calories leaves a lot to be desired. But even within what I think is that skewed model, we can see that the digestive system operates better when it has that, again, I believe, expected stimulus in the system of relaxed movement, whether it's walking or housework or, just picking corn or I don't know. I don't know what else other than walking around for water and scavenging we would have done 10,000 years ago, but do that.
Well, that's a great note to go out on for this conversation. Great to have you on.
Thank you.
You're listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin. If you like this episode, I encourage you to stay tuned because there will be a few more other conversations with Jeremy and, of course, other interviews to follow. The music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. Till next time, take care.